The Galactic Council's headquarters stood as a testament to the combined influence of hundreds of interstellar species, located on a neutral planet far from Earth. It was an awe-inspiring sight for any who arrived. Its towering spires of alien architecture touched the sky, shaped by the aesthetics and engineering of civilizations vastly older than humanity. The atmosphere was thick with a feeling of ancient, undeniable authority. Alien representatives, some towering and others barely visible, moved through the main hall in serene silence, their complex garments shimmering in the low, otherworldly light. Captain Ella Simmons had arrived as humanity's appointed representative, a seasoned diplomat chosen for her experience and adaptability. She'd spent months preparing for this moment, studying each species' customs and understanding their shared protocols. But nothing could have prepared her for the actual experience of standing among such a vast array of sentient life. She was dwarfed by some and nearly missed by others, but the weight of representing Earth hung heavily on her shoulders, and she held her chin high, determined to make humanity proud. The council chamber was immense, designed to accommodate beings of all sizes and shapes. At the center of the circular hall was a raised platform where representatives could address the assembly, surrounded by tiered seating areas filled with species from across the galaxy. Some were silent and dignified, others more animated, chattering in their native tongues or using complex gestures. The air was filled with a low hum as voices of different timbres and frequencies mingled. Ella, accompanied by her assistant Alex, took her seat in the outermost circle, as per the instructions. The location felt like an obvious signal humanity was welcome, but only as observers for now. The inner rings were occupied by the oldest and most powerful civilizations, including the reptilian Braxoi, known for their diplomatic dominance, and the ethereal Olonians, whose forms shimmered and shifted like mist. Each race sat with an air of supremacy, their movements slow and deliberate, as though reminding others of their elevated status. Ella watched as the council's leading member, an elder Braxoi named Valtrak, slithered up to the podium. His voice reverberated through the hall in tones deep and imposing. Greetings to all who gather. Today we welcome a new species to our council, a young, eager civilization from the planet Earth. Welcome, human representatives. There was a polite round of applause, though Ella noticed the subdued glances exchanged between several of the older representatives. It was clear that many of them did not view humanity as an equal but rather as a novelty, a race to be observed and guided. She felt a pang of discomfort but maintained her composure, knowing she couldn't afford to show weakness. Valtrak's gaze fell on Ella as he continued. The Galactic Council has a long-standing tradition for young civilizations. To ensure harmony and respect, all members must adhere to the polite protocol. This protocol has been refined over centuries and has been instrumental in maintaining peace among our diverse cultures. Ella nodded politely, though she'd already read the polite protocol. It was more than just etiquette. It outlined a hierarchy that essentially required young civilizations to defer to the older, more advanced ones. To her, it felt unnecessarily restrictive, even humiliating. The protocol demanded acts of submission, bowing, using deferential language, and refraining from certain types of questions or opinions until formally invited. It wasn't just about manners, it was about keeping younger civilizations in line, reinforcing the Council's power dynamics. As the session continued, Ella observed the other representatives. When Valtrak made a point, the lesser-ranked species around him nodded in unison, their faces blank with silent acceptance. The room was filled with ritualistic gestures, nods, hand movements, vocal acknowledgments that signaled compliance. Ella couldn't help but notice how alien it all felt, not just in appearance but in principle. Humanity's presence was here to learn and integrate, but they were being subtly reminded of their place as a newcomer at every turn. After Valtrak concluded his speech, the other council leaders took turns addressing the assembly. Most used flowery, carefully constructed language that sounded more like a show of power than genuine conversation. As she listened, Ella noticed a disturbing trend. Every speaker referenced humanity in passive, almost patronizing terms. Words like eager and curious were used repeatedly, implying that humanity was childlike in its understanding. No one seemed interested in hearing from the humans themselves. Feeling a spark of irritation, Ella leaned over to Alex. "Do you notice how they're framing us?" she whispered. "It's like they see us as pets, not as partners." Alex nodded, his expression matching her frustration. "It's hard to miss. Every word they use seems calculated to reinforce our junior status here." Ella clenched her fists subtly, hiding her reaction from the others. She'd spent her entire life working towards this moment, believing humanity's place in the galaxy would bring newfound respect. Yet here she was, surrounded by beings who saw her people as something lesser, something that needed to be controlled. Her training told her to stay calm, but she felt a fire rising within her. Her pride, and the pride of her entire species, was on the line. The council meeting stretched on, covering various topics that Ella and Alex had little say in. Whenever a suggestion was made regarding human matters, it was quickly followed by an elder species recommendation to respect the polite protocol and defer to our elders. Ella listened, feeling her patience thinning with each passing moment. During a break, Valtrak approached her with his unmistakable, condescending tone. "Captain Simmons," he said, his voice low and nearly dripping with superiority. "I hope Earth finds our traditions enlightening. The polite protocol has been a cornerstone of our peace. I trust you will find it instructive." Ella met his gaze, refusing to back down. "We appreciate the wisdom of the council," she replied diplomatically. "But Earth values equality among all beings. We believe mutual respect is the best foundation for peace." Valtrak's expression remained polite, but a faint gleam of irritation flickered in his eyes. "Ah, but respect must be earned, Captain. And respect for our elders is the first step. I suggest you follow our traditions, and in time, perhaps Earth will understand its proper role here." He left before she could respond, his form gliding gracefully back to the inner circle. Ella stood still, feeling a surge of defiance building within her. She understood the need for diplomacy, but this constant insistence on humanity's inferiority was wearing on her. As she turned to rejoin Alex, she overheard whispers from nearby representatives. "They should know their place," a tall, willowy alien murmured to his companion, casting a sidelong glance at Ella. "Humans are. Well, they are fragile, aren't they? Hardly suited for the weight of interstellar politics." Her face flushed, and she fought the urge to confront them. Instead, she walked away, her mind racing. It was becoming increasingly clear that the council viewed Earth as an amusing diversion, a race that was meant to sit quietly on the sidelines while the real species conducted important matters. The idea that they expected her to simply submit to this hierarchy was becoming intolerable. Back in their quarters that evening, Ella and Alex discussed the day's events. Alex was visibly frustrated, pacing back and forth as he vented. "They don't see us as equals, Ella. They're treating us like we're children who wandered into the adults' room. And this polite protocol, it's designed to keep us exactly where they want us." Ella nodded thoughtfully, her own frustration simmering. "I know. And the worst part is they think we'll go along with it because we're new. They're underestimating us." "Then what do we do?" Alex asked, pausing to look at her. Ella took a deep breath, her mind already forming a plan. "We follow the protocol for now, but we use it to our advantage. We'll be respectful, but we won't let them ignore us. We'll show them that Earth is more than capable of holding its own. And if they continue to disregard us, we'll make them listen." Alex's expression softened into a smile of admiration. "I trust you, Ella. If anyone can change their minds, it's you." That night, Ella lay awake, contemplating her next steps. She knew that outright defiance could alienate the council, but she was also aware that endless submission would only reinforce humanity's perceived inferiority. Her goal was to find a balance, a way to assert Earth's worth without breaking the diplomatic ties they had only just begun to build. As she drifted into a fitful sleep, she knew one thing for certain: she would not let humanity be silenced. The following morning, Captain Ella Simmons prepared herself for the day's council session with a renewed sense of purpose. As she reviewed the polite protocol one more time, she found herself analyzing it with a critical eye. Its requirements seemed innocuous on the surface. Each new civilization was to show deference, avoid initiating speech without permission, and use titles like Honored One when addressing senior members. But the deeper she looked, the clearer it became that these rituals were crafted to reinforce power dynamics. They were designed not to promote harmony, as the council claimed, but to preserve control over younger species. Ella's frustration simmered as she made her way through the grand, shimmering hallways of the council building, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Her assistant, Alex, followed close behind, his face set with determination. He could sense her resolve, knowing well that she intended to do more than just observe this time. As they entered the council chamber, Ella noticed that today's agenda was posted on a massive holographic screen hovering above the assembly. The topics of discussion were significant interstellar trade laws, planetary defense policies, and decisions about resource allocations. It struck Ella as odd that humanity's interests were only briefly mentioned at the end of the schedule, as if Earth were an afterthought in these important matters. The elder Braxoe, Veltrak, opened the session as usual. His deep voice reverberated through the chamber as he recited the day's agenda with an air of indifference toward those seated in the outer rings. Ella glanced around, observing the expressions of various representatives. Many looked passive, merely going through the motions. Yet others, especially those from younger, less powerful civilizations, seemed tense, as if yearning for an opportunity to speak out but held back by the weight of protocol. Veltrak's gaze swept across the assembly, and he briefly made eye contact with Ella. His expression was unreadable, though she detected a flicker of warning in his eyes. As he continued, she noticed how carefully he selected his words, subtly reminding the lesser-ranked civilizations of their place. She clenched her fists beneath the table, frustrated but determined to stay composed. The first item on the agenda was a debate on interstellar trade restrictions. Several high-ranking alien representatives, mostly from species that controlled vast swaths of galactic territory, began discussing limitations that would heavily benefit their own economies. The rules would severely limit smaller civilizations' ability to negotiate or conduct trade without passing through these powerful entities. Ella felt a surge of anger as she realized the implications. Earth, like many other younger civilizations, would be at a permanent disadvantage if these restrictions passed. Ella couldn't hold back any longer. She cleared her throat and raised her hand, a simple gesture of request to speak, which was not strictly forbidden, though it was certainly unusual for a junior member. Her small act immediately drew the attention of those nearby, who exchanged surprised glances and murmurs. Veltrak narrowed his eyes but nodded curtly. "The representative from Earth wishes to contribute?" Ella stood up, her heart pounding. She chose her words carefully, speaking with calm authority. "Honored members of the Council, I recognize the wisdom of your experience and the contributions you have made to galactic peace. However, I must raise a concern about the proposed trade restrictions. They seem to disproportionately favor the established civilizations while hindering the development and self-sufficiency of emerging members like Earth." A silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the occasional rustling of wings or flicker of alien eyes shifting in her direction. Ella could feel the weight of their gazes, some shocked, others intrigued. Veltrak's expression hardened, but he allowed her to continue. "Humanity understands the value of cooperation and mutual benefit," she said, her voice steady. "But we believe that fair trade practices should allow all members of the Council to prosper, regardless of their current standing. I propose that these restrictions be reconsidered, with provisions that would allow for a more balanced approach." The chamber buzzed with quiet murmurs. Representatives from smaller civilizations watched her with expressions of admiration and hope. Ella could sense that her words had struck a chord, particularly with those who had long been voiceless within the Council's rigid hierarchy. Veltrak cleared his throat, clearly displeased. Captain Simmons, while your eagerness to participate is noted, I would remind you that these protocols exist for a reason. The younger civilizations must learn to follow the guidance of those with greater experience. It is, after all, for their own benefit. Ella met his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. With respect, honored Valtrak, Earth believes that mutual respect forms the basis of any effective partnership. Experience is valuable, but innovation and diversity of perspective are equally important for progress. A ripple of gasps and murmurs echoed through the chamber. Valtrak's eyes narrowed, and for a brief moment, Ella feared she might have overstepped. But she held her ground, knowing that her words had resonated with those who had silently endured this hierarchy for far too long. Several of the older representatives exchanged glances, clearly unimpressed, while others merely raised their brows, intrigued by this unprecedented display of defiance. Finally, a member from a smaller, bird-like species rose and spoke in support of Ella's proposal. "Perhaps there is wisdom in the human's words," he said cautiously, his voice high-pitched and warbling. "We have long accepted these restrictions, but many of us have struggled under them. Perhaps it is time to consider adjustments." Ella's heart swelled with gratitude as she saw others, even if timidly, begin to voice similar thoughts. Her words had planted a seed, one that seemed to be taking root among those who had yearned for change but lacked the courage to speak. Valtrak's expression darkened, and he quickly steered the discussion back on track, brushing aside the comments from the smaller representatives. The meeting continued, though Ella noticed a shift in the atmosphere. Several members glanced her way with expressions of newfound respect, while others whispered among themselves. The council's unity was not as solid as it appeared, and for the first time she sensed an undercurrent of tension. As the session progressed, Ella's subtle defiance continued to ripple through the assembly. When the council moved on to discuss planetary defense policies, she again raised a question about the disproportionate emphasis on contributions from younger civilizations, pointing out how the demands for resources and manpower strained their economies. Valtrak's displeasure became increasingly evident, his responses clipped and terse. During a break, Valtrak approached her with an icy glare. "Captain Simmons," he said in a low voice, "I would advise you to remember your position here. Humanity's recent inclusion in the Council is a privilege, not a right. We do not appreciate disruptors, and it would be wise for you to respect our traditions." Ella held his gaze, her voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, honored Valtrak, humanity has a history of challenging the status quo when it seems unjust. We are here to contribute meaningfully, not to merely observe." His lips curled in a faint sneer. A history of defiance indeed. But remember, Earth's position is precarious. You would not want to jeopardize it by overstepping your bounds. He turned and left without waiting for a response, leaving Ella with a mix of anger and determination. She was acutely aware of the risks involved in her actions, but she was also fueled by the support she sensed from the other marginalized representatives. Her defiance had sparked something within them, a reminder that they were not alone in their frustration. As the session resumed, Ella continued to make her presence felt in subtle but impactful ways. She deferred when necessary, choosing her battles carefully, but she never backed down when a policy seemed unjust. Each time she spoke, she felt the council members' eyes on her, some cold and disapproving, others quietly admiring. The older civilizations remained dismissive, yet she could feel the younger members rallying, emboldened by her actions. Toward the end of the day, during the discussion of interstellar resource allocations, Ella again raised her voice. She proposed a system that would allocate resources based on need and contribution rather than rank. Her suggestion was met with both support and resistance, sparking an intense debate. Valtrak attempted to shut her down, but this time, other representatives joined in, voicing their agreement with Ella's proposal. The council chamber buzzed with energy as her defiance began to inspire a broader movement. By the end of the session, Ella had made an impact that couldn't be ignored. Valtrak's disdain was unmistakable, but his usual authority seemed weakened in the face of the growing unrest. Ella left the chamber with Alex by her side, her heart pounding with a mixture of pride and apprehension. She had shaken the foundation of the council's traditions, and she knew there would be consequences. As they walked back to their quarters, Alex spoke in a hushed tone, his voice filled with admiration. "Ella, that was incredible. I could see it in their faces, they're starting to see us differently. I think you might have sparked something bigger than you realize." Ella nodded, though a part of her still worried about the repercussions. "We're not here to follow blindly, Alex. Humanity has its own strengths, and we deserve to be heard. If challenging the status quo brings us closer to equality, then it's a risk worth taking." That night, she couldn't sleep, her mind racing with thoughts of the day's events. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but the support she'd received from other representatives gave her hope. For the first time, she felt that humanity's presence in the galaxy could be more than just symbolic. They had the potential to drive real change, not only for themselves but for every species that had been held back by the Council's oppressive hierarchy. With newfound determination, she prepared herself for the battles yet to come, knowing that the path to equality would be fraught with resistance but also with the promise of transformation. The next morning, Captain Ella Simmons felt a sense of resolve solidify within her as she prepared to enter the council chamber. After the previous day's events, she knew her presence had stirred up tension in the Galactic Council, and she could sense that today's session might be pivotal. It was clear to her now that humanity's place here would never truly be established through silent compliance. If Earth was going to be taken seriously, it would have to be on its own terms, even if that meant openly challenging the Council's deeply ingrained hierarchy. As Ella and her assistant, Alex, entered the chamber, she noted that the usual hum of idle chatter had quieted. Council members, especially those from the older civilizations, cast her cautious, even hostile glances. She could feel the weight of their disapproval pressing on her, as if they were silently warning her to fall back in line. But there were also other gazes, hidden in the outer circles, representatives from younger civilizations who looked at her with curiosity and, perhaps, hope. Ella took her seat, ignoring the tension that rippled through the room. Valtrak, the elder Braxoi, presided over the council from his high platform, his cold, reptilian eyes narrowing as he acknowledged her presence. She could sense the disdain emanating from him, but instead of cowing her, it strengthened her resolve. Today, she would not remain quiet today. She would make humanity's stance clear, no matter the consequences. The session opened with discussions of routine policies, and Ella kept a strategic silence, observing the council's dynamics with even greater intensity. She noticed how representatives from powerful civilizations dominated the conversation, steering it toward their interests. Smaller civilizations were occasionally acknowledged, but only to support the decisions made by those in power. It was a constant reminder that the Council's polite protocol was designed not for fairness, but for control. After the routine matters, Valtrak raised a hand, signaling for attention. "We now move to the final agenda item," he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The topic of Earth's integration into the Council's defense network. As a new member, Earth must contribute resources and personnel to our collective defense, in accordance with the protocols established for junior civilizations." Ella felt a flicker of anger. She had seen the document regarding the defense contributions. It placed undue strain on Earth, demanding resources far beyond what they could comfortably provide. The Council expected Earth to commit fully to their policies, yet they offered no real voice or influence in return. It was yet another way to keep humanity in a subservient role. Unable to hold back, Ella raised her hand. Valtrak glanced at her with thinly veiled impatience but nodded for her to speak. "Honored members," she began, her voice steady. "While Earth acknowledges the importance of contributing to the defense network, we cannot ignore the disparity in expectations. As a new member, we are asked to sacrifice a significant portion of our resources without a proportional influence in the Council's decisions." Valtrak's eyes narrowed further, his expression icy. "Captain Simmons, Earth's role as a junior member is to support the greater needs of the Council. You speak of influence, but influence must be earned. Your species has yet to prove itself capable of understanding the complexities of galactic governance. Ella's gaze did not waver. With respect, honored Veltrak, I would argue that influence is earned through mutual respect and collaboration, not enforced submission. Humanity did not join this council to be a silent supporter. We joined to contribute and to be heard. A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. Some representatives looked appalled at her boldness, while others, particularly those from newer civilizations, nodded in agreement. Ella saw a few of them straighten up, clearly emboldened by her words. Veltrak's jaw tightened. Captain Simmons, I must remind you that this council has endured for millennia under the polite protocol. It has preserved peace and order among vastly different civilizations. Your refusal to follow these customs is not only disrespectful but disruptive. Ella met his gaze evenly. Perhaps, then, it is time to question whether the polite protocol truly serves us all, or if it merely preserves the power of those who created it. An audible gasp echoed through the chamber. Even Alex, sitting beside her, looked stunned. But Ella felt a calm certainty as she spoke. This was not just about Earth, it was about every voice that had been suppressed, every civilization that had been forced into silence. Veltrak's composed facade faltered, his scaly skin flushing slightly as he struggled to contain his anger. Such insolence, he hissed, his voice barely controlled. You forget your place, Captain Simmons. Ella took a deep breath, her voice unwavering. I know my place, honored Veltrak, and it is here beside all other civilizations, not beneath them. Earth has come here in the spirit of equality, and we will not sit idly by while decisions are made that disregard our values and potential. For a moment, silence reigned, and then, from the outer circle, another voice spoke. It was a representative from a smaller civilization, a species known as the Erythians. She rose slowly, her small, feathered form trembling slightly as she addressed the council. I, too, have questioned the polite protocol, the Erythian representative said, her voice quivering but resolute. For centuries we have followed it without question, yet it has always kept us at a distance, never allowing us to truly contribute. Perhaps Captain Simmons is right. Veltrak turned on the Erythian representative with a look of incredulity, but before he could respond, others began to join. Representatives from other young civilizations rose, one after another, voicing their frustrations and their desire for change. The atmosphere shifted, the controlled order unraveling as voices of dissent filled the chamber. Ella felt a surge of hope and pride. Her words had sparked a movement, one that was long overdue. Seeing the growing unrest, Veltrak's cold demeanor broke into open frustration. This is madness. You are destabilizing the council with your baseless demands. The polite protocol has held our civilization together. Without it, we risk chaos and conflict. Ella rose to her feet, speaking with a clarity that commanded attention. The polite protocol may have served its purpose once, but civilizations evolve. To continue building a future of peace, we must adapt. True unity cannot be achieved through forced submission. It must come from equality, respect, and shared decision-making. The council chamber was electric with tension, representatives whispering among themselves, torn between tradition and the possibilities of change. Ella could see that some members of the older civilizations were unmoved, their faces set in hardened resolve. But others, even among the older species, watched her with a mixture of intrigue and reluctant respect. Finally, a voice broke through the silence. It was the Elonian representative, a member of one of the oldest and most respected species. His form shimmered, shifting colors as he rose and addressed the assembly. Perhaps the human speaks with wisdom, he said, his voice deep and resonant. Tradition holds value, but so does progress. It is possible that the time has come to review our practices and to determine if they still serve the common good. The murmurs grew louder, and Ella felt a surge of triumph. She had not only defied the council's expectations but had also gained support from unlikely allies. Valtrak, seeing the shift, could do little but mask his anger. With a reluctant sigh, he addressed the assembly. "Very well," he said, his voice tight with barely concealed disdain. "In light of today's discussions, I propose a formal review of the polite protocol. A committee shall be formed to examine its role in our council and determine if amendments are necessary." Ella felt a wave of relief and pride as the council voted to move forward with the review. She had succeeded in challenging the very foundation of the council's hierarchy, not only for humanity but for every civilization yearning for a voice. As the session adjourned, Valtrak shot her a final, cold glare. "Do not presume that your actions will be without consequence, Captain Simmons," he said, his voice low and venomous. Ella met his gaze, unflinching. "Earth understands the risks of standing up for what's right," honored Valtrak. "We always have." With that, she turned and left the chamber, Alex at her side. Outside, several representatives approached her, offering words of support and gratitude. The Erythian representative bowed slightly, her feathers ruffled with respect. "Captain Simmons, your courage has given us all hope. Perhaps now we can build a council that truly represents all of us." Ella smiled, nodding. "That's the goal. Together we can create a future where every voice matters." As she walked away, Ella felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Humanity had proven that it was not here to submit, but to lead, to challenge and inspire. She knew there would be challenges ahead, and that Valtrak and others would resist the changes she had set in motion. But for the first time, Earth's place in the galaxy felt secure, not as a lesser civilization but as an equal, one capable of standing up for justice and unity. Ella's heart swelled with pride as she looked up at the vast, starry sky beyond the council's chambers. Humanity had taken its first true step into the galaxy, and there was no turning back. Together with the newly empowered civilizations, they would build a council based not on hierarchy, but on equality, a place where even the smallest voices could be heard. And as she gazed into the stars, Ella knew that Earth's legacy in the galaxy was only just beginning.